Max Schneider is the founder of Sand and Salt Escapes. They're an organization curating extraordinary experiences for high achieving professionals. And he's the founder of Ritual. It's an organization that is helping organizations, it's an organization helping organizations reconnect and provide great wellness and extraordinary experiences for their employees. Welcome to the show, Max.
Thank you so much for having me, George. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal lives, more about your work, and why you do what you do.
I am a person who, probably like a lot of your guests, is wired to constantly go and constantly push. Conditioned that way from birth, and then you also have a bit of that wiring, natural disposition towards it. So that was kind of my story from high school to college. I studied business and then went into consulting for about 10 years after that. I was getting a chance to do some awesome work, traveling about 200,000 miles a year, working with some awesome Fortune 10 organizations, and just really enjoying what I was doing. But that constant drive to push, that constant drive to not really enjoy the moment, but always focus on what's next, what's next, what's next, really caught up with me. And about 3 years ago, I burnt out very hard. I got shingles in my 30s, which was quite the accomplishment. And I started having anxiety attacks, things like before getting on planes or on calls, and really didn't know what to do. It was a totally new experience for me. And so I picked up and went down to Latin America for a period of time just to slow down and get out of my normal rhythm. And while I was there, I've always had a mindfulness practice, but I was really leaning on my mindfulness practice pretty hard. And that was an extraordinary experience for me to be able to slow down and tune back into who I was and just start making sense of how fast I had been moving for the prior, really at that point, like 33 years of my life. And what I knew to be true was that my experience isn't unique, unfortunately. We all, I think, different points in our lives lose a little bit of touch with who we are as people. We're burning the candle a bit too hard at both ends. And we can hit these walls or have these ups and downs during our lives. And I wanted to create something that helps people who are going through those types of experiences and use mindfulness, movement, and conversation as a way to do that. So the work started moving. I quit my job, not really knowing what was next, and ended up starting a company where we were running mindfulness retreats for individuals, particularly high performing individuals who do push pretty hard and need some space to themselves. I started running those retreats in Osara, Costa Rica. I ran 11 in the first 24 months. And as that was going on, I started getting interest from my network saying, hey, what you're doing is interesting. How might we integrate that with our organization? So we started running offsites for executive and intact teams using mindfulness, conversation, and movement to help them really tap back into who they are as individuals and then figure out, okay, what does that mean for us and how we interact together as a team and start embedding some of those kind of more mindfulness practices and rituals into their day-to-day rhythms.
Well, that's easy. Just totally shift your whole life.
Exactly, just like that.
Piece of cake. Go from being a
Yeah.
consultant, traveling all over the all 200,000 miles a year to not, and helping people be a little bit more still.
Yeah, it was quite the challenge. I remember the first day I was gainfully unemployed. It was April 9th of 2022, and I sat down to practice yoga that morning, and I started bawling my eyes out. It was a really cathartic experience, and I'm somebody who's never really been like an emotional person. And man, that morning I just like lost it. It felt like I was just starting to understand the gravity of what I was doing, of leaving behind everything that I had worked my entire kind of life and career to get to, and all of like that place that you're told you're supposed to be, and stepping away from it with no real plan. It felt like I was in the middle of an ocean, treading water, not able to see land, and just really didn't know what way to go. So it was really scary making the leap and trying to get things going from the beginning. Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So much of life is it's an inside job and it's an outside job. We're obviously with ourselves all the time. Do you talk to me a little bit about the value of just going somewhere, of being out of your regular habits and routines?
Yeah. If you think about just like the evolution of our species over the course of time, about 2 million years ago, we discovered fire and started making art. About 700,000 years ago is when we started building homes, hunting with spears. Homo sapiens started evolving into the planet about 200,000 years ago. We didn't start recording history till like 5,000 years ago. So think about that pace of evolution over roughly 2 million years, and then think about everything that's happened in the last 100 years, where you've got like temperature control mattresses. We've got cars to take us places. We can get across the world in less than 24 hours. We've got podcasts that we can constantly listen to. Like all of these things are going on all around us. And the world that we live in is not the world that we evolved to exist in. So that creates a bit of a challenge for us. I don't think it's something that a lot of us are kind of consciously aware of because we're just born into it. But our brains aren't wired to be able to take in this deluge of information that we have all day, every day. And there's a lot of implications to that. And you talk about the ability to get away from your day to day. That's massive if you're going to be able to slow down and start to peek inside a little bit and understand more about who you are. If you think about your brain as a pond, and every input that we get every day is like throwing a rock into that pond. Some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger. So it's a text message, it's the emails, it's watching the news, it's listening to the podcast on the way to work, it's the conversations that we're having with others. All of these different pieces of information that are constantly hitting our brain. They're kicking up the water. Those big rocks are hitting the bottom of the pond. They're kicking up muck, and it's just a mess. And we do that from the moment that we wake up, when our cell phone is the alarm that we use, and the first thing we're doing is checking our messages, to the last thing that we're doing before we go to bed. When we get a chance to get away, particularly in the types of environments that we curate, where we take care of every detail for the guests so that they can slow down and focus on themselves, all of a sudden you stop throwing rocks and inputs into that pond. You can begin to see the water settle. You can see reflections off of it. And when you do that for a period of time, you can start to see down underneath the surface. And you can start to see the unique contours that make up the bottom of the pond, where those big logs are, where the rocks have come to rest. And you get a different perspective on yourself simply because you've stopped throwing so many inputs in and you're allowing your brain to return to a bit more of the natural state that we actually did evolve to exist within.
what a great metaphor right there. I I love everything about that.
Yeah, it's
So people get off the plane and they're like, okay, here I am. I've been the busiest human being on earth, working 60 hours a week up until this moment, and now I'm putting my phone down, and here I am. What do I do with my hands? How long does it take for people to adjust, if at all? Or maybe it happens right away.
It depends on the person. Some people are very excited to take their phone, put it away in a corner of their room, and not look at it again for the next week. Um, Other people have a bit more of a weaning off process, and we don't tell anybody to do anything in particular when they're there. Like we'll nudge you to say, like, hey, when you feel that urge, just to look at your phone, just see like, do I need to? Is this just out of habit, or am I actually like doing this purposefully? So yeah, it depends on the person, how long it kind of takes to slide into it. But I think pretty quickly you realize the freedom that you get back when you aren't tethered to this device, where it's just like scratching an itch. It's something you really need to do, but you just constantly have like this urge to pull it up, to scroll, to check something that we really have just like convinced ourselves we need to do. And when we can slow down, stop that information in coming in, we just get to pay attention to ourselves and the things that are going on around us in a much more aware and conscious way.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that. Speaking of nudges, I imagine that the thought of, for a busy professional, of taking a week or so off of work is a wonderful, magical idea, but I bet super hard to actually get to the finish line of, yeah, I'm totally going to do this. But then when the rubber meets the road, I bet that there's a lot of apprehension about that.
Yes, there is. And you can, so we talked, what I was talking about there was more on like the individual retreats. When we work with executive teams, that's certainly the case. And we talk with the teams ahead of time about, hey, when you're going to be here, this isn't one, it's an excellent opportunity to empower your team around you to be able to kind of take on a little bit more responsibility and step up while you're out. So that's certainly like one benefit to being able to step away from it. And two, it's something that I think at first people are like certainly hesitant around. There's a little bit of skepticism with it, but we're really selective with the clients that we work with, and we make sure that like the CEO who we will partner with is somebody who's already created a culture of openness and a culture of kindness. And those are things that are really prerequisites to be able to step into this kind of work. Because if you don't have an open mind, and we're sitting there and we're jumping into a sound bath, or we're jumping into breath work, or we're having deep conversations, just unpacking a little bit more about who we are and the things that are important to us and getting to shine a light on that. Uh, if you're on a team that already doesn't have a culture of openness, it's going to be oil and water. So we're pretty selective in the organizations we work with, but we found that when we have teams that already have a culture of openness built into it, the work tends to speak for itself and bring everybody right along.
Yeah, yeah, I believe that. I believe that once somebody is in the environment, it has to be a function of why did it take me so long to do this? I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, well, and we just also create, I think, such a like a high baseline for the floor of the experience where we're staying in absolutely stunning villas, whether we're in like Palm Springs, Joshua Tree, the Smoky Mountains, in Nosara, we're staying in stunning homes. We have a private chef who's taking care of all food for you. We have private transportations taking you to and from the airport. So everything is already like you're walking into such a beautifully manicured environment that no matter what, so your guard's going to get let down. You're going to be able to sink into the space a little bit faster because there's just nothing for you to worry about while you're there.
Do you obviously are serving a pretty good cross section of people, all of which are open and kind, and I appreciate that. Do you have to have a background in mindfulness? Do I have to know how to do this stuff?
Not at all. In fact, most people that we work with don't have mindfulness practices, and we take a lot of time and really just unpack and understand, like, okay, what does mindfulness even mean? Why do we talk about that? And just the ability to be in the present moment, absent any judgment. Like, how do we actually do that? Well, the most important tool that we have to be in the present moment is our attention, and our attention can only be in one place at any given time. So we start figuring out then, okay, well, what does that mean? How do we actually use tools like meditation to train our attention to be in the present moment? And so I think what we do really well is we're able to just demystify and make pragmatic a lot of these tools that a lot of times can feel a little bit more woo-woo or a little bit more out there, but we can take them and break them down in a really just practical way and give people some very concrete steps that they can take. First of all, experiencing and understanding, okay, well, oh, this is what it's actually like to meditate. And why do we always focus on our breath? Well, the only time we can breathe is in the present moment. I can't breathe in the past. I can't breathe in the future. I can only breathe in the present moment. So by training my attention to my breath, I'm cultivating presence. Like when I first understood that, I was like, oh my gosh, well, I've been practicing meditation for years. And like I just now understand that it's like this big unlock for me. So what we really focus on is just taking those things and making them accessible, making them very pragmatic for people, so you can actually do something with it when you go back as well.
Yeah. Understand that it's a tool, maybe not like any other, but like many other for regulating our emotions and
Yeah.
becoming more productive. I suppose if that is something that we're desirous of, and or just turning it off and having the ability to do that and to unwind and to not let ourselves burn out.
Yeah, and I think it is important, really like use that word productive there. We try not to tie it to productivity. We're not doing this to be
Sure.
productive, but what we really like to use it for is cultivating, obviously, presence is really important, but we use it as a tool to also bring forward like vulnerability, to build resilience, and to build agility. And those are the three capabilities, particularly when working with executive teams, that when we talk about mindfulness, that's what we're laddering it towards is vulnerability, resilience, and agility, which are skills that every executive in the year 2024 and going forward are going to need in droves.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Just thinking about myself, if I'm not vulnerable with the people that I'm working with, it doesn't work at all. It's certainly just we all need to become more resilient in the face of everything that we're faced with. And then certainly the ability to perform many different sorts of tasks slash interactions slash functions throughout the course of the day. To be more agile is certainly of value. So we're just making our brains better.
That's a great way of putting it.
So you've been at this now for several years. Is it what you expected exactly? Is it close?
The journey has been far from what I expected. I don't know that I had a whole lot of expectations going into it. I just knew what I wanted to be doing. Um, and the ups and downs that I've experienced in building this has been it's been a lot. You saw talk about resiliency and agility. Those are massive, massive things that I've had to continue to work on just in my own practice. But as far as the work itself and the meaning that I'm getting, just like to be part of with these individuals in this team, these teams is extraordinary. It's exactly what I did hope for going into it. And that ability to just help people kind of come home to who they are as people is at the core of our experiences. But we're human beings. We ladder on these other titles on top of it, where we're like a EVP at this bank, or we are a parent to these kids, we're a partner to this person, we're a child of this person, we're this role in the community. We layer on all these concepts of who we are, and oftentimes that's what we identify as is these titles. Uh, so to help people to realize that's not actually who I am. Sure, it's part of my existence and part of my identity, but that's not who I am at my core. At my core, I'm a human being, and to give people the space to be able to peek into that and to see who am I as a human is incredibly rewarding work to be able to sit there and hold that space to have those conversations, and explore that. And then we can deconstruct. Once we deconstruct, we can start putting back on those other layers to figure out, okay, great, then what does that mean for me to be a parent in a way that's aligned to who I am? What does that mean for me to lead my organization in a way that's aligned to who I am as a person rather than kind of who I think I'm supposed to be?
I think in certainly I feel like we are waking up to all the realities that you've been talking about, how you laid out this great human history timeline of 200,000 years ago, how Homo sapiens came to be, but it's been 5,000 years or less. We've been actually recording history, and now we've got mattresses that we can heat up or cool down. And it is very much breaking our brains. And this most recent political cycle or whatever it was is certainly breaking our brains. And I think that we need to collectively wake up and do a better job of managing how we're interacting with the world and technology. And what you're describing is essentially that.
It certainly is. Yeah, I agree. I think that there are some shifts that are going on, and some use the phrase waking up, and I love that. Like there's a little bit of waking up that's going on and realizing that we are conditioned as like a society and a cultural, like there's I don't think there's some like nefarious person at the top who's like saying this is like the direction we need to be moving society or anything like conspiratorial like that. But just the way that we are as like a species, as a culture, and as a society, we have start to like have this conditioning and this uniformity that exists. And I don't think that's necessarily healthy. I think that we're all like helps us, that prevents us from understanding who we are as people and really accessing that unique individuality that we have and the superpowers that we have as people and being able to bring that to the world. And I do think that there is a bit of a awakening up to that going on right now.
I like I really like the exploration of human superpowers because I think that we have a lot of them and very few that we tap into. And I think that vulnerability is 1000% one of those human superpowers, um, and one that we don't tap into enough. And in the face of artificial intelligence coming to each one of us and the implications that's going to have, I think that that's going to strengthen the case for being more vulnerable and recognizing the things that make us unique and the skills and gifts that we bring to the world. And then when we actually do that, it's going to help us through whatever the future is.
It's such a more human approach to life. And I mean, if you're in a conversation with a friend and they ask how you're doing, you're just like, oh, things are great. Here's just the highlight reel of what's going on right now. And then they just play back the highlight reel of what's going on with them right now. And you both leave the conversation and you've not tapped into like probably 70% of what's actually going on in your world. But in those conversations, when you can lead with a little bit of vulnerability and say, actually, I'm having a really, like, it's been a really bad week. I had this happen, this conversation, or this occurred at work, or I'm struggling with this at home. When you open that door up and you lead by being vulnerable, all of a sudden that gives that other person permission to go, hey, this is actually a little bit of a safe space here where I can share some of the things that are going on in my world that maybe aren't as great. And when we can start getting that out, you realize, oh, wait, I'm not alone in all of this struggling or challenge that I'm facing. We all have our own challenges and our own kind of baggage that we're carrying through this existence. So it just opens up those conversations and that ability to connect with each other as human beings. Yeah, and to your point about AI and all the technological advancement that's happened over like the last quarter century or so, the ability to be human is becoming more rare, and I think as a result, more valuable.
Yes. I, I think that that's so well said right there. We're all we're all carrying a bunch of junk around with us or rolling the boulder up the hill every day, like Sisyphus does.
Sisyphus, yep.
We're all doing that in some form or fashion, and we all know it. So why not, without just walking around like I'm Eeyore and being mopey all day long, but have real conversations and create those. I dislike the term safe space, but we all know what it is. Create more of those authentic spaces.
Yes. Yeah, that's it's a gift when you can do that for yourself and you can first learn how to be vulnerable with yourself and admit some of those maybe insecurities or things that are going on or things that aren't as great as you hope that they are. And you can first start to do that with yourself, and then you can start to do that with others, and you can start to just create opportunities of actual human connection.
It's a beautiful thing, Max. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people learn more about you? How can they connect with Sand and Salt and Ritual?
Yeah, so you can check out website sandandsaltescapes.com, or you can email me directly. My email address is max at sandandsaltescapes.com. It's the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you ever have any questions about mindfulness, going on retreats, if you've got an executive team who's interested in it, I love this stuff. I love just geeking out on it. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, George. Any listeners ever want to connect about it, but really appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation today.
Awesome. Likewise. Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, show Max your appreciation and share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to sandandsaltescapes.com, spelled out. Shoot Max an email, max at sandandsaltescapes.com, and jump into these worlds that Max is creating and curating and see if it is the right fit for you to do all the things that we've been talking about. Thanks again, Max.
Thanks, George.
Until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.